Hello, hello.
Hi, Alyssa. How are you? Good
Good.
to
How
see
are
you.
you? Can you hear
I'm
me?
good. Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Perfect.
There's a lot of books in the background. I like your background.
Yes. I feel like that's like the number one thing of like when you're an author, it's like you have to have the bookcase. And I'm like, yes, I get an excuse to like showcase all of my books now.
Yeah, it's really nice. Um, so Alyssa, we've gotten to talk before, but I want folks to get to know your background. So let's start there. Where are you from? Where are you right now? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Alyssa Reynoso-Morris. I am Dominican and Puerto Rican, but I currently reside in Philadelphia by way of the Bronx, New York. So, um, super proud of being Dominicana, Puerto Riqueña, and I rep the Bronx all day. But I love living in Philly too, and it it's fun living in the city because it's like you're just surrounded by art and um, I always feel like I'm no matter where I go, as long as like I'm rooted in my books and the books of other authors that I'm always connected.
So did you grow up in the Bronx?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. No, I grew up in the Bronx, but I spent all of my summers in the Dominican Republic. So I'm sure like a lot of listeners might relate, summer vacation when school was closed,
Right.
summer camp, era mucho chavo, right? And my single mom was like, how much for summer camp? No,
Right.
eso no, mejor yo te mando. And so every summer I used to go to the Dominican Republic and I used to spend time with my family. I got to work on my Spanish. I got to feel connected to my roots. But, during the school year, I grew up in the Bronx up until I went to college, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
So was it during your childhood that you became interested in writing, or was that further on?
Yes, yes. My abuela was the storyteller in the family, and so she was always the one who instilled this love of storytelling as a form of connection since I was young. But I didn't see our stories in the form of books, right? So while I was really interested in storytelling, it wasn't until a couple years later that I realized, what if I became an author and wrote some of these stories down, that I can share them with the world, right? So it was kind of like a 2 point process. The first love was oral storytelling and the way that she could make people feel seen and heard and loved, and she can share wisdom through storytelling. And then later on, it dawned on me that books have that same power to do that as well, but potentially to a broader audience. And so that's when I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I don't know what I'm gonna do it, but one day I'm gonna become an author.
And and you've done it, right? So you have three books, three children's books. Can you tell me about your interests in children's literature specifically?
Yes,
Why that route?
absolutely. So I love reading adult books. A lot of the books on my shelf are adult books, but I think the reason why I gravitated more toward writing children's books is because of how open-minded they are. Children are so full of wonder and curiosity, and they still believe that anything is possible. They haven't become like jaded by
Right.
society quite yet,
Yeah.
and I thought, oh my gosh, it would be so much fun to write for kids, right? So that's one of the main reasons. But the other reason was because growing up, I was the oldest, and so I didn't really have a typical childhood. I had a lot of responsibilities thrust on me because my mom was a single mom. She did an amazing job. But I didn't get to like do the things that like, typical kids do. And so for me, being able to write for children is an opportunity to like heal that part of my life and be
Mm,
able to explore life with more of like that childhood wonder that I didn't really have that much for that long.
mm,
So it's 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 for more than one reason, and I guess the third is probably because now I'm a mom, right? So
mm.
as a mom now I get to read my own books to my kids, and it's really cool.
And do you think there's any books during your childhood uh, that really influenced your writing later on? Or,
Yes, I
yeah,
would say I don't remember like childhood,
yeah,
like super young, but I do
yeah.
remember the first time I felt represented in a book, and that was Julia Alvarez's In the Time of the Butterflies.
Mm,
And then I was like, whoa. It was like mind blown to read the stories that my grandmom used to tell me about Trujillo and how vicious he was, and reading it in a book. And I was like, whoa, this really happened, because sometimes our abuelos and abuelas tell stories and it's hard to decipher what's like real and what is more like hyperbolic, and
mm,
exagerado. So
yeah.
for a long time growing up, like she would tell these magical stories, and like magical realism, I was just like, I don't know what part is magic, I don't know what part is real, but I'm here for it, right? And then reading that book was like, oh wow, so like this really happened.
Mm,
And so I went in a deep dive into her books, and I read all of her books that I can get my hands on, including her children's book, like When Tia Lola Came, to Stay, and all that whole like Tia Lola
mm,
series. And then through her, I was able to find other authors, right? So I went to the
mm,
library and I was like, do you have more authors that write books like this? And that's
yeah.
how I came across like Sandra Cisneros, The House on Mango Street,
Mm,
and then Jacqueline Woodson, and now more contemporary authors like Elizabeth Acevedo and Jason Reynolds, right?
mm,
So it was like once you found one,
right.
it,
A bunch of others.
yes,
Right.
yes. And your libraries are a perfect way to do that. Like librarians go to school for years and they know how to find the right book based on what you're interested in.
Right.
And so they help me with making great recommendations.
Yeah, I actually got one of your books, Plátanos Are Love, at the library.
Yay! Love libraries.
And both of the librarians that I spoke to knew of your book. So uh, that means it's getting around with different groups, right?
Yeah.
And I'm here in Los Angeles. So yeah. Tell
So,
me more about tell me more about your books. Plátanos Are Love, The Bronx is My Home, Gloria Presente, A First Day of School Story. I feel like they're all representative of bigger themes. So with Plátanos Are Love, I found that it's really a celebration of culture through plátanos. And then The Bronx is My Home is very rooted in the Bronx and that identity.
yeah.
And then Gloria Presente, I feel like it's so relatable to people that have those first day of school jitters, especially kids. So tell me about what inspired all of the ideas for your books.
Yes, yes, for sure. So Plátanos I Love, available in English and in Spanish, in hardcover and paperback. It was inspired by actually my daughter because her first solid food was a toston.
Mm.
If you know, you know. So I was like so excited. I was like freaking out. I was like, yes, mi hija es dominicana, right? Like, I was like, I'm gonna like expose her to all things plátano. And so I went online and I'm like looking for a book about plátanos to read to her. And I was like, pero where are they? Like there were zero books at the time when I wrote it, and I was just like, okay, I guess I gotta do it. And so I wrote it back in 2018. It didn't actually get published until 2023 because publishing is a process and it
Right.
takes time. Um, but now it's here, and it's exciting to be able to share Plátanos with her. And when we cook together, she's always like, Plátanos are love, and I'm like, yes they are. Um, and now there are other books about Plátanos too. A good friend of mine wrote, well, we became friends because we're in like a special club, right? Like one of the few people that wrote a book
All
about
the
Plátanos.
Plátano
Yes,
lovers.
yes.
Yeah.
And so that's really what inspired this book. The second book, The Bronx is My Home, is a love letter to kids from the Bronx. Um, Really, all my books are love letters, but this one in particular is rooted in countering the narrative about the Bronx because growing up, I loved growing up in the Bronx. I had neighbors that spoke every language under the sun and food from a bunch of different cultures, and I felt I felt safe growing up, you know? And then it wasn't until I left the Bronx that you hear all this rhetoric around the Bronx being dangerous, the Bronx being bad. And I'm like, you can get mugged anywhere, y'all. I never been mugged in the Bronx. I got mugged in London. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so it was this idea of countering that narrative that I felt was false. And so really at the heart of the story, Santiago goes and explores the Bronx, and he's talking about all of the amazing things you can do in the Bronx while really talking about how you can become whoever you want to be. And so like that, I also have a
I love
spread
the
where,
cover.
yes, Kim
Yeah.
Holt did an amazing job. And so there's a whole spread about heroes are born and raised in the Bronx. And then I talk about AOC. I talk about Sonia Sotomayor. So letting kids know that heroes are born and raised in the Bronx and they are heroes, right? And they always get really excited about that. Um, and then my third book is called Gloria Presente. It was inspired by my experience as an English language learner. I was super nervous on my first day of school because I didn't speak any English. And I mean, going to school is scary enough, right? Like everyone gets those like jitters. Change is hard, period. But then when you have that extra layer of not knowing the language, it makes it even harder for some students. So for kids who are English language learners, I hope they see themselves in Gloriana. And for kids who know English, I hope it fosters that sense of empathy so that they know, like, oh, wow, my friend might be going through this. This is something that they might be struggling with. Let me be extra, extra kind, right? And so there's the teacher, Mr. DeSalvo, in the book is actually based on my fourth grade teacher, Mr. DeSalvo, who helped me find my voice and helped me feel like seen. And
So
so
a
they're
lot
all,
of the inspiration is your own life, you
yes,
would say. Hmm.
yes. So they're all like fiction technically, but they're all, I would say, like realistic fiction because they're all rooted in my experiences and the experiences of, you know, the kids in my life that I've seen.
Right. And do you have a favorite character? I know it must be hard to choose. They all must feel like children. But
Uh, it is so hard to be like, who's your favorite kid? You know, like
right.
I don't really have a favorite. I think it just depends on what I want to feel or what I want my reader to feel, right? Like when I'm really missing my abuela and I want to tap into that ancestral wisdom, I'll read like Plátanos Are Love. Or if I'm really missing the Bronx, now that I live in Philadelphia, I'll read The Bronx is My Home.